On today's episode of Let's Grow Together, I interview podcast and social media expert Ben Leavitt, and we talk about stepping out of your comfort zone. And he talks about something called the 3-second rule, which I'm really excited for you guys to hear, and I absolutely love. So let's dive in. But first, the intro. Welcome to Let's Grow Together. My name is Nick Bonatadabis, motivational speaker and digital marketing strategist. And this podcast is all about helping you grow both in life and business. Let's dive in. Hey, Ben, how's it going?
It's going great, Nick. I'm excited to sit down and chat with you today, man.
Hey, man, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, it's mutual. I appreciate yours. I'm glad that we could make this happen.
So, before we get into really about the theme of the podcast, I really like growth and understanding certain habits that have helped that growth. Real quick, just give us a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you serve.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. So Ben Leavitt is my name. Actually, if you want to go by my full name, it's Benjamin Hayden Paul Keith Leavitt. So it's definitely quite a mouthful, but typically people call me Ben. So we'll stick with that. I'm a YouTuber, podcaster myself. I host my own show. And then I also run a digital marketing agency where I help businesses and personal brands leverage the power of social media to connect with an audience, serve, and also to make some money. Because obviously that's what is pretty important with running a business.
That's awesome. Yeah, and obviously what we both do is it's similar in a way, and I think that just goes to show you too that to me there's no competition in this
For sure.
space.
No. There's so much room.
Yeah, there's enough for us to go around. So, how did you get started into this world? How did you get started in the social media world and helping people do these things?
Yeah, it's an exceptional question. And it's kind of a funny story. So I didn't have Instagram for a long time. Or, sorry, I did have Instagram, but I was one of those creepy people that like would never post, but I'd always have it. So I was one of those Instagram stalkers. And it came more from like I struggled with acne at the time when I first got it. So it was more of insecurity about not wanting to post pictures of myself. But I became fascinated by people's ability to build a following and leverage that into a business. So if you had talked to me when I was a little kid, I would have told you two things: that I was going to play in the NFL, which unfortunately didn't come to be. But the other thing, which did come to be, was that I'd be an entrepreneur and in business. And so, what really piqued my interest with social media is the incredible business tools that they are. So after I overcame the fear and the insecurity of not liking the pictures of myself, I dealt with my skin. Then I started to dive into my own personal journey and exploring the different platforms. I'd say my first love was probably YouTube, simply because that's where I established some really tight connections with influencers and different YouTubers that really provided me with a lot of confidence to want to go and do it myself. And I think I just love the YouTube platform because of how it functions, with it being the second largest search engine in the world. There's so much opportunity there, which we can dive into later. But that's what I love. And then I learned about Instagram. I knew that I loved this stuff because I loved to learn about it. So I think that's where it all came from, was just seeing the opportunities there.
That's awesome. And I'm going to go into that a little bit further because I kind of talked about this on my last episode of, that judgment and getting started. So, what have you done to really like get out of that? You mentioned, you were a little insecure at first. So was there anything specific that you kind of did to, kind of get out of your own way to start being more present online and, starting a YouTube channel and things of that sort?
Yeah, a big push that came from was actually, it came from a negative with one of my good friends passing away at a very young age, and it just kind of provided that clarity where it's like, who cares? You could literally die tomorrow, and if I feel in my heart of hearts that I have things that I owe to share, and it's like, if I don't share it today, I may not have it tomorrow, and that impact may not have been felt and spread to, even that, like we said before, if it's just one person, if I don't make it, that one person can't get the value from it. So it was really just the push for, one, who cares, and two, if it doesn't matter, as long as it's helping potentially even one person, it's all worthwhile.
That is awesome. That's so cool. And as we talk, and just more and more things that I'm realizing we have in common, which is pretty
Hmm.
awesome. And to go into that of really appreciating and having that value. I think it's really important to if you're open to to talking more about how that experience, because I know for me, having a similar experience of losing someone that's younger, and how that impacts you, how has that really helped you grow, aside from just like social media posting, or if you're willing to maybe open up a
Yeah.
little bit that more.
Yeah, 100%. I'm always happy to talk about Luke. The experience with him passing away, I think he was 19 or 20 at the time, so he was quite young, and that was there's one of those classic moments where there's nothing positive in it, but that comes down to who you are as a person and your ability to take a positive from such a negative, terrible situation. So for me, it was the fact that I just made it my point of emphasis to live life and go after anything that I wanted if I wanted it at all, and to understand that time is so fleeting and life is so precious that if you don't squeeze everything you can out of it, I don't want to live with any regrets. And so that was a big push for that. So I play that in my own head pretty often if I'm ever hesitant, or if I'm being lazy. I just think about how precious life is, and just takes me back to that moment of unfortunately going to that funeral and thinking just like how lucky we are to even be breathing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing it. And I couldn't agree more. And I think it's something that we often struggle with, that we need a reminder of. Sometimes we hear that, and we find appreciation for it, but then we just get wrapped up in our own life.
It's
And
easy to do.
yeah, and I think it's important that we always bring ourselves back to that level. And so, do you have anything specific that you do daily to remind yourself of that, or is it just kind of in your head?
So I think it's fairly subconscious now. I can do it without thinking. But in terms of daily habits to ensure that I'm going after things, is I do a bunch of different things. So people have like a bucket list. I have a get it list. That's what I call, and I constantly add to things where I'm like, hey, I want to get this and get it done. So I have like it's very long, it's very macro, like the things that I want to achieve. So that's something that I do. If I ever see somebody do something cool that I'm like, wow, I would really want to do that, I'll add it to my get it list, and then I'll try to chip away at them slowly whenever an opportunity presents itself. And then I also have a daily. It's not a to do list per se, but there's things that I have that are every day that I do. If I do these things, it'll be a productive day. And then other things that I need to get done for that day specifically. So on my everyday one, it'll be I have a few different things, and I'll share them here. I check in with a few people that I haven't spoken with. I try to do 3 to 5 a day of people that I haven't spoken to in a while, and then I'll also reach out to 5 new people via social media to try to connect with them, potentially get them on my show if not interested, at least to try to provide value and grow my network that way. And then another one is physical fitness, because I know how important that is physically, but also mentally. I feel so much better when I've worked out and when I've been active. So it's like I feel stupid when I don't give myself that superpower. So that's something that I always try to do, is at least get 30 minutes of good exercise. For me, that's typically the gym. I enjoy that a lot. And then there's a few other daily things that I make sure to get in there. And then I throw in my need to get done tasks as well.
That's so awesome that you mentioned this, because for anyone who's listening that's listened to previous episodes, are you noticing a common trend here of how much of every single person now that I've interviewed has mentioned that working out is one of the most important things that they do daily and has such a huge impact? And I'm with it too. Now, on that subject, are you a morning workout person? Are you an evening workout person?
Would say I used to be evening, but since I've been getting my body accustomed to the mornings, I am a huge advocate for that, because if you get it up and done early enough, it almost feels like you didn't even go to the gym. Like you still have the energy. You're like, I could go again. So I really love that and the longevity that it creates for the day.
That's awesome. I had the same experience. I was always a night person. Like sometimes I would put it off so much that I would work out at like 10:30, 11:30 at
Yeah, I
night,
was the same, man.
because just pushing it off, and doing it first thing in the morning is like absolutely amazing. Specifically, I like to like run. What do you do? Do you run? You work? You lift? What's your like main workout?
Yeah, my main workout would be primarily lifting. I really became attached to that and the ability to grow and physically but also mentally because of football. That was always a big part of it, was the weight room aspect. So unfortunately, obviously, I can't play football anymore, but that's still something that I can do every day that still provides that competitive spark and the athleticism that came from one of my first loves, which was football.
Awesome. And I know you touched on that briefly earlier, which is funny that you talked about being a professional uh, football player because on the podcast when I was on your show, I talked about how I wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny, was there a certain like when was the point maybe that you realized that that wasn't going to be like that wasn't actually a achievable goal
Yeah.
for you?
So I think so. The NFL was always a very, very lofty goal coming from being a Canadian, because there's maybe a handful of them in the NFL period.
Yeah.
So when I played college football in Canada, that was obviously a sign that it's like, I think there's only been a few guys in history that have gone from CIS, which is our equivalent of the NCAA, to NFL. Like that never happened. So that was also my own fault because I didn't make a highlight tape, which hindsight, I was like, I was just so cocky, not cocky, maybe just ignorant about how the system worked. I'm like, oh, I'm good enough. They'll find me. It's like, no, you idiot. You need them to find you and have something to find. So that was a huge eye opener. I look back on it and I think, wow, Ben, you were stupid and ignorant, but that's fine. We all learn from it. And then I'd say I knew that I wasn't going to play in the CFL when I looked at how much they made, and I was like, that's not worth the torture on your body. So that was a big decision because plus I had a bunch of injuries. I tore my ACL, concussions. Like my body for a 23-year-old, I probably have the body of like a 70-year-old man. Like I've been beat up.
Yeah, and I think that you see that too in the NFL all the time of just like players, the longevity of players in the NFL, especially like running backs. What the average is like 3 years
And
or
that's what I
something like
played. So it's like there's not a whole
that.
lot of lifespan there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a dangerous game. I mean, you see it regularly now of how, competitive and dangerous it is. People leading with their health and the new rules that are coming in
Yeah.
to kind of try and protect the safety. But to get out of the football aspect, but also to kind of stay with it too. Is there certain things that like some valuable lessons that you learn from, playing football, like maybe one specific one that really stayed with you that happened in football?
I owe so much of my life to football. It was such an instrumental part in my maturation as a man. Like it was so, it was everything for my foundation. I think that I would push anybody to play a competitive sport because it just teaches you so many things, especially a team sport, because you're forced to deal with people for a common goal. Even people that you may not get along with all of your teammates, but you learn to deal with that, which is so crucial for anything that you want to do in life is your ability to deal with people. And I'd say I owe a lot of my social skills to that as well, from being put in so many uncomfortable situations on the field and off, that now you go numb to that and everything seems comfortable. And I don't think that would have happened if I wasn't forced to put myself out there constantly, especially when you're playing a position that you carry the ball. Literally every eye in the stadium is watching you. So you have to become okay with that. Because if you screw up, like it's great and it's terrible at the same time. If you screw up, you're the man. But if you mess up, they saw you do it. So I think there's so much that I owe. I think that's a big one. My ability to deal with people, and also I think, which is huge for business, is I learned that there's a direct correlation to your willingness to put in effort to what you get back. So I think I was struggling at football for some time, and I asked the coach. I was like, "Well, what could I do to get better?" I wasn't starting, I wasn't playing, and then they gave me things to work on. And in doing that, I then earned a starting position, and my whole football career changed dramatically. So I think that was a huge eye-opening moment.
That is awesome because I had a similar story in baseball as well, where I wasn't playing and I asked the coach, it's like, "Hey, what can I do to get better?" And one thing he said was like, "Work on double plays." And what did I do? Went to
And
the
banged
field
him
with my
out.
dad and just started turning double plays, throwing it, throwing it, throwing it, throwing it. That's what you got to do. So I love that you mentioned kind of doing something that was out of your comfort zone. Do you have any um, daily practices of like trying to make that part of your life of like being uncomfortable?
Yes, man. That is something that is huge for me. And actually, it's amazing that you asked that question, because I actually had like this 3-second rule where, when you feel those butterflies in your stomach, I have done this for the past, I'd probably like say 6 or 7 years, where whenever I feel that, I have to do whatever it is that I'm nervous about. So like I'd be at a conference or something like that, and they'd be like, "Is there any questions?" And if I felt that nervousness in my belly, I'd throw my hand up even if I didn't have a question ready. And then I'm like, it's sink or swim, Ben. You got to face this fear, come up with a decent question, provide some value here. And it always worked out. So I think when you do that and you learn that you can continue to do those things and you're okay at the end of it, that's pretty powerful to eventually teach you that nothing's that scary.
That is awesome. Do you know how many people are horrified to raise their hand at a conference and you're doing it without even having a question ready? That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's a force. If you do that, I would love to challenge anyone to do that because you become very comfortable very quickly through doing that. Because even what I'll say is that I have screwed up. I'm like, oh, I forget my question, but at least then I learned that it's okay. No one cared. The day goes on. So I think that's yeah, your successes are awesome, but your failures teach you more, I'd say.
Right. And that's awesome because that's a great example too of kind of where you're stepping out of your comfort zone and, what we picture in our head so much worse. Like it's not like everyone in that room now is like, "Oh my god, Ben, he like got up and didn't have a
He's an
question."
idiot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's like no one's thinking that. They're just like everyone's so in their own head. And
Yes.
I think we forget that so much, like of how much, just think about how much you are in your head. Everyone's the
Yes.
same way, and so allowing your own thoughts and fears to affect how you interact with the world, I think it's just no way to live. I love that, the 3-second rule. I may have to, I think I'm going to steal that. That's
Do it up,
definitely
man. It's
something
it's
that.
been crazy powerful for me in so many situations where you don't have time to think. 1, 2, 3, go.
Do you have another example of that you could share?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say like talking to girls is the same sort of thing. If I see a pretty girl where I'm like, I would really like to talk to her. And it's like I know in my heart of hearts that's something that I want to do. It's a 1, 2, 3, go. And again, it's a sink or swim thing. You gotta be quick on your feet here, Ben, because if she's standing in front of you, you just said hello, you gotta figure this out.
That's awesome. That is great. That is. I think that's something that everyone should to try and incorporate in their life, and kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and doing things that scare you a little bit. Is there anything that's maybe a little bit bigger that was something that was really scary for you, that because obviously those are, talking to girls can definitely be scary and raising your hand at a conference, but I was just wondering if there's anything that was like really scary that you made a big jump to, you kind of almost using this step a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say I've always been pretty comfortable in front of people for the most part, but probably the most gut wrenching thing that I've ever had to do was I took this vocal class my senior year of high school. And the story being was that I'd always sing in this other teacher's class when it wasn't supposed to be a singing class, like just messing around. So he's like, Ben, I'm teaching this vocal class now. Why don't you take it? You can actually get grades for singing in that class instead of disrupting the class. So I was like, yeah, okay, sure, I'll take that. It's going fine. It's going well. Like I'm not a good singer by any means, but I enjoy it. It's fun. And then he tells us that the final project is singing in front of like this huge audience. No, a solo. So I was like, "What the hell are you doing to me, man? Like, I'm not a singer." So I had to sing in front of all of these people, which was pretty gut wrenching. And I used the same principle. It was like 1, 2, 3, get on the mic, let's go. And to add a little bit of intrigue to it is that right before I went on stage, my buddy says, "You won't give me a shout out," and I was like, okay, I guess I got to give you a shout out now too. So I called him my vocal coach. I was like, I want to thank my vocal coach Kurt Schlabitz for all of his help, blah, blah, blah. And then I got into the song.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's too
Yeah, it was
funny.
funny, man. It was
That's
funny.
great. Yeah, and to go into, you being on stage and being in the public eye. Now I know, you had asked me about, a speaking question. I was wondering if you actually have, done any speaking gigs, teaching the similar things that you teach in your programs that you're working on. Have you spoken on stage from this standpoint? From
Yeah,
like,
that's something I definitely want to do more of. And that's why I love picking your brain on that topic because you found great success in doing that. But I think in my master plan, I think that's something that's will be very consistent in my life is I love the opportunity to try to spread knowledge and entertain and motivate people through that medium of a one-on-one audience talk. So I've done a few talks in schools, but I've never done too much in terms of a true business aspect. It's primarily been reaching out to local schools or my old school and going there and speaking to students that way. So I think that's a good way to start. I want to start doing a lot more speaking. So I'm going to try to seek out more opportunities to speak at more business related activities. And I've had a few offers here and there that hopefully will happen in the next year or so. But that's something I definitely want to do. And I'm sure I'll have a lot more questions for you because I want to refine my craft for sure.
that's awesome. Yeah, no, definitely. I'm always happy to help, and I know you're always helping me too with, my podcasts are always my first go-to. So you just mentioned, when you're speaking on stage that you love to inform and entertain. And to me, I think that's such a huge aspect as us for content creators,
Hmm.
that it's so much more than just informing people, that there is that level of entertainment. So
It's
like
crucial.
for somebody that's maybe creating content, do you have any advice that you would give that's maybe in that area of how you've been able to like be more entertaining and not just informative?
Yeah, so I think that's something that is paramount to drive success and actually have your videos and message have impact. So I make weekly videos on my YouTube channel, and there's just three principles and three pillars that I have in my head whenever I go into any video, and that's what I want to make sure that I entertain, I educate, and I empower my audience. So the three E's is what I focus on to make sure that I hit those. And with that being a focus for every video, I'll make sure that I'll view things from the potential viewer's perspective. And it's like, well, would I be entertained during this? And if not, then I need to up the tempo a bit, provide some more enthusiasm, or provide some way to get them more engaged.
That is so amazing. That's literally in my course, those three
That's
words.
awesome. That's
That's
huge.
so amazing. That's awesome. Yeah, we're on the same page. Because it's tough, sometimes just like doing video or opening up in general, and especially on video. So here's the funny thing, like you're getting on crowds more and speak in public, but what's so interesting about video is that you don't have the feedback. You
Hmm.
don't get that interaction. So like there's a lot of people sometimes that maybe they're like public speakers, but they like don't like video because they're not used to having the, like, it's so by yourself where you're just like looking at a lens.
It is pretty
And
weird. Yeah.
right, isn't it? it's
Yeah.
it's definitely something that takes some getting used to. And the reason I brought that up, because like if you're trying to entertain and you would do a joke, you literally have to do the joke and just put it out there, and you don't even know if it lands.
Yeah. Especially with videos, because there's the potential that thousands or hundreds of thousands of people could see this. And if the joke doesn't hit, you just bombed that to all those people.
Yeah, it's not like, stand up where you can kind of like maybe mix in some jokes and figure out what works and what doesn't
Yeah.
work. You're just taking a shot. And I think that that's so important though, like, because even if it's bad, it still has that value to be entertaining. And I
Hmm.
think that that's so important. Would you have any advice for maybe something like that, of like a joke, or like being okay with being bad?
Yeah. So, man, go back to my YouTube channel and watch any of the early videos. They're terrible. Like, they're so bad. I think you have to love that, and I leave them on there for that exact reason. They're there almost as much for me as anyone else, because I can go back and look and it's be like, so if I make a video that I feel was bad today, I can always go back and watch the worst ones and be like, oh, it wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? So that's a big thing, and just understanding that you can't get the good without the bad. You need the bad first to then tweak, modify, refine your processes, and eventually get better. So don't compare your first video to someone hundreds or thousands video. It's not fair to yourself, and it's not even accurate, because they've come so far only through doing.
That's great advice, and I couldn't agree more. And I think it's also interesting too, how you commented on like going back to your old videos, because sometimes we often get caught up in where we are today and
Hmm.
don't take a moment to really look back on how far we've come from when we first started.
It was bad, man. I started out with making like fitness related videos, because I'm very passionate about fitness, but I wouldn't say it's my unique value proposition. Where I'd say social media and the business stuff that I talk about now, I think I'm in the top percent of people out there who talk about this. Whereas the fitness, I don't think I was. I think that's why it didn't work as much. I loved it, but I wasn't up there where I think you need to be. And I think in your heart of hearts, if you're willing to become that, you don't have to be that right away. But if you're willing to put the effort to make yourself that, then you're in the right spot. And I wasn't. So I transitioned. And so, yeah, you'll find some random fitness videos on my YouTube channel.
Awesome. Yeah, and you leave them up there. You keep them up because, whatever. Again, it's like that's your, origin of,
That's it.
people seeing it. And I think that that's so great too, of what you said about like trying to be that that top. But I think the biggest thing, and I want your feedback on this, but the passion, like how important do you think it is to have that passion on what you're speaking about?
It's everything. It is literally everything, and I think even from a utilitarian perspective, you're naturally gonna be better and more inclined to continue to get better at something that you're passionate about. That's actually why I'm rebranding my whole podcast as Project Passion, around the whole aspect of making it the paramount that everyone is going after something they're passionate about, because I genuinely believe that the world will be a better place if more people are doing that.
That is so awesome, and I think that that's a message that everyone can kind of relate with, regardless of even if you're not in business, of just like doing more things
That's
that
it.
that make that you get excited about. Like, do you have any insight or advice of how to kind of find that passion?
For sure. It comes through doing things constantly. I've always been someone who's tried everything. Like if there's something there, I don't care if my friends think it's weird, I'm going to give it a try. And then after through doing that, your body will tell you everything you need to know. It'll tell you, you'll feel a certain way and you'll know something that you love when you do it. And that's for me, that's the podcast, that's speaking to people like you, that's making the YouTube videos. I truly enjoy watching a video, even of myself. And I'm like, that's going to help someone. And like, that gets me fired up. So I know that that is something that I need to be doing. I only found that out through actually doing it and then listening and doing some self reflection to say, like, okay, this makes me feel so much better or different than other things that I've been doing that I have to do, but I don't love them. I'm not passionate about them.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's great. I know you and I talked a little bit about this on your show. So I kind of want to shift it a little bit so we're not necessarily repeating the content. Because I want to get value on both. So we talked a little bit about habits, and we talked about how working out. Do you have any weird habits that maybe are a little bit abnormal that you do that you would share that you maybe find value in doing?
Man, I'm so weird. That's the only thing. Like, people who know me, like genuinely, because if you come across me, you just see me like, oh, he looks like a pretty normal dude. If you get to know me, like I'm pretty weird. I talk to myself like all the time. Like I'll literally have like in-depth conversations with myself about like analyzing a conversation that I've had or a situation. Like it's super weird, and I've done it since I was little. My mom would hear me; she'd be like, "Who the hell are you talking to?" I'd be like, "Oh, just me." She's like, "What's wrong with this kid?" But I found that as a very good reflection mechanism to actually to constantly evaluate things and how I could have done things better for to yield a better outcome, all that stuff. So I'd say that's a big one. Is I talk to myself a lot. Other weird habits. Um, I sing a lot. Like if something's quiet or random, like I'll just sing. Like I don't. I've always done that. So I'd say those are probably the two weirdest things that happen in abundance.
That is hilarious. Again, the commonalities between you and I just continue to build on each other because I talk to myself also. It's just like one
Perfect.
of
We're
those
both
things.
weird. Yeah,
Yeah. Like, walking around my apartment, just talking to myself,
I constantly do that.
like, Nick, what are you doing? Stop doing that.
Uh,
Or like,
I had one of those conversations in the car today. I was like, Ben, stop. What are you doing? It's just me. I'm like, people must think I am a nut.
And that's too funny too that you mentioned the singing. For me, it's not singing. I like to dance.
Okay.
So I will actually dance. I don't know if I've ever talked about this publicly, but I like to just dance in my apartment. The music sometimes playing when I'm working, and just move around. I just like to feel the music and get it going. It makes me happy, and it's like these little joys in life that I feel are so valuable.
I'm much the same. Like you ask people who know me as well, like that's one of the things that they would associate with me too is dancing, and I'll get some booty popping out there for sure too. And the right song comes on.
Awesome. So in regards to joy and like and I know that this is something that I've talked about, and I think it's a struggle with all of us in the kind of like the work life balance that people talk about. And some people say there isn't a balance, some people say that there is. um I think it's important too that we're not like grind, grind, grind all the time. So, tell me just a little bit about maybe your experience that you've had with kind of managing, with everything that you're doing, but then also, trying to have a life at the same time? Do you have any, insight or your, just your experience kind of with that?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a very important topic that isn't discussed enough. And I think because hustle culture has become very much a thing where it's just like hustle, hustle, grind, 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 do this if you want to be successful. If you don't, you're a loser type thing. And I think if you want to be exceptional at anything, it's going to take sacrifices, commitment, and time. I don't think that's avoidable. So I think that's something that you have to come into it being okay with. And the thing that you're doing, the passion that you're pursuing, has to be so deep that you're willing to make those sacrifices. But I think it's also scheduling things that are important to you that aren't that objective is still very, very important, because that time away from it is going to allow you to come back with a lot more optimism and enthusiasm when you actually do start doing the grind again. So I think making time for your friends, making things a priority or making people a priority is awesome, especially when everyone knows that you're working hard. They know that you're crazy busy. So when you make time for them, they really, really appreciate that. So if you can schedule that ahead of time so it doesn't become something that falls through the cracks, everybody benefits from it, especially myself, because I get so much from that.
Awesome. Now, do you you mentioned like hanging out with friends. Is there anything else maybe aside from people that you will like block off time to make sure that you're doing?
The exercise that we talked about, that's definitely super important to me. And then I try to do education every single day. It's something that I want to try to learn something new every day. So usually that comes in the form of at least reading two or three chapters of a book every day, or learning a new skill related to marketing or social media, things of that nature from YouTube. We have such a crazy availability of information nowadays that if I don't feel like I'm maximizing that, I feel so lost, and the opportunity, I'm just not seizing it because there's so much out there. You could constantly be learning. So trying to make that a guided practice, something that I do all the time, is definitely something that I try to make consistent.
That's awesome, and I couldn't agree more. Like if you're sitting like watching TV shows, and it's like, man, there's so much like knowledge out there that you could be learning. I mean, you could be learning a language, like that. It's just kind of like whatever it is that you want to do,
You can do it.
you can do it, and you can find resources, and a lot of times it's free. Whether it be on YouTube or not. But I do love that you brought up, books, because to me that's a big thing for me. I feel like books really changed my world, and just it's the knowledge thing. I know that I had a post where I talked about reading, and you commented on my Instagram just like knowledge, because that's like the big thing. It's not so much like books, but it's just like seeking knowledge and how important that is. Do you have maybe like one book or a few books that you recommend that like really just kind of changed your life or impacted you in a positive way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on that note, just to throw a little side note to this, is that I was the kid who would never read a book growing up. I went through all of high school writing papers on books that I didn't read. So like that should speak to the fact that it's crazy switch and contrast now that I actually seek out time to read books when I literally would watch the movie and make things up about it. So that's funny. And I see you laughing there. So I'm thinking you're the same way.
Yes, dude. Like no joke, did the same thing for a
that's,
term paper. Like
that's,
watch the movie, The Natural, instead
yeah.
of reading the book.
That's awesome. I did one on Into the Wild, I think it was called, and I used a quote that was from the movie, and it wasn't in the book. And then she got me. I was like,
Oh
"Oh
no.
no!" So she took off like 10% for that. I was like, "Damn!" But whatever. I will go back to your question there. I've read a ton of books that have been super powerful for me. I think one that's important given the current economic landscape is that we're likely going to head into a recession within somewhere in the near future. Who knows when? But a book called Unshakable really teaches people the grounds into how to build and establish wealth during a recession, because that's truly the best opportunity to set yourself up for future success. And one quote from it was, I think it might have been from Buffett or one of the other people that he consulted with, was that you need to look at it like, yes, it sucks that you're going through a recession, but think about it like everything that you would want to buy is now on sale. So it's like if you have the assets and you've set yourself up in a good position, you could build crazy wealth that would not be possible if not for that recession or that sale. So I think that book was huge. Excuse me. And then another book that I just finished that was on my list for so long, and everyone's like, Ben, you need to read this book. You need to read this book, was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Hmm.
I think I've always been decent at dealing with people. So a lot of these things I think I did subconsciously, but when you actually make a mental note to do them, the impact is so valuable there, especially if you struggle with dealing with people. I think that book should be a must read.
Yeah, that's awesome. So the first book, that's Tony Robbins, right? Unshakable. Yeah,
Yes. So Tony Robbins is very smart in the fact that like he's not an investment expert, but he has access to all of the best investment experts in the world. So it's Tony Robbins' book. He doesn't really say anything. He consulted with the top investment people in the world.
that's awesome. And then I love that you said How to Win Friends and Influence People, because I think that's such an important book. And I read it because that was one too that like a lot of people, recommended that I would read. And I think that it's beneficial for anyone. Again, it's like this isn't like a business book. This is a personal
It's a life
development
book.
book. And I honestly, I don't like the title a lot.
It
Uh,
Yeah, I think it's a little dated, and I think it could be presented in a lot better of a way for sure.
yeah, like I don't want people to,
It Yeah, it
take,
objectifies people like they're like a something that to be owned or won.
that you're like brainwashing them. And it's
Exactly.
really like not what the book is about. I would
No.
also say if you're a parent, oh my gosh, that it was like super
Yes.
valuable.
I was thinking of that while reading it. I'm like, this is gonna help me as a future father.
Yes, yeah, because he uses example of how he talks to his kid. It's a communication book, of how you communicate with people, and how important that aspect is, the best way to communicate with people.
110%. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I'll have everything in the show notes too for these books and all of Ben's stuff. And um, to go more into the seeking knowledge and really just pursuing that growth aspect. Is there anything aside from books, and maybe like courses, that you do in regards to like seeking to learn?
Yeah. So I think podcasts are a huge one. That's exactly what pushed me to start a show was how much value I took away from that. And it's the same sort of mindset shift that I had that's allowed me to start reading books was the crazy realization that you're literally getting your idol's perspectives, knowledge, and life's work handed to you. They're delivering that to you. That is insane that we have that ability and that privilege to get so much wisdom accessible in so many different ways. Like if you want a video, you can probably find a video. If you just want audio, you want to take it to go. We have that. Like we're so lucky. It blows my mind every single day. And I think just understanding how lucky we are that I need to take as many ways as possible. So if ever I can make a situation where it's idle time and I can try to make it more of a value driven exercise. So say like driving places, if I know it's going to be a lengthy drive, I'll make sure and I'll plan ahead that I'm going to listen to this podcast because I know that there's something that I want to take away from it. So I think podcasts are huge, constantly just seeking out different videos. But I think one thing that I did learn was becoming not just mindlessly searching for things to learn, but going in with some sort of intent. Like, what am I trying to take away from this listening session or this viewing session, and how can I actually maximize this? Because if you're there and you're present in what you're trying to consume, it's going to sink in and have far more impact that way.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. I think that having intention in general, I think is so, um, you know, powerful, to just like have intention with everything that you do.
For sure.
One thing that I talk about again on social media is like having intention with everything that you post. Like there is a strategy and strategic, standpoint with having that intention. Now, you mentioned the podcast and having podcasts. Do you have a specific podcast, or aside from your own, that
Yeah.
you would recommend, or that's like maybe your favorite?
Yeah, well, I'm a huge like some of them all look more for broad life skills approach or mindset things, and then some will be a lot more tactical, specific to my business and my niche. So like I'm a huge marketing social media nerd. So if some of them are specific to that. I have a big list. I'll name a few that I really enjoy. One is called The Diary of a CEO. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that episode or sorry, that show. It's by Stephen Bartlett, the co-founder of Social Chain. It's a massive digital marketing agency that just actually went public. And it's crazy because he's like 25 or 26 and he's built this crazy massive business. And he was a very poor kid in England who dealt with like racism, all these things. So he's a perfect example where so many people create these false realities for themselves of why they can't do it. And it's like if Steve can build this juggernaut of a business from the situation he came from, you can do whatever you want. Another one was Smart Passive Income by Pat Flynn. I love that one. I kind of view myself as like the Pat Flynn for like younger people, or like the younger Pat Flynn, because I didn't even know who he was until I stumbled across his content, and we had so many videos that were like almost identical. It was crazy. So he's a huge inspiration for me, someone that I try to emulate. And another one for anyone who runs an online business is The Art of Online Business by Rick Mulready. That is a great show. He is one of the pioneers in the simple Facebook advertising formula space. Like, he has a great course on that. So I listen to him a lot. And then I'd say the last one that I'm pretty consistent on will be, sometimes I check in with the Gary Vee audio experience, but I very much enjoy the Tim Ferriss show. I think his content's great.
Of course, there's more overlap with you and I.
Yeah,
Again, just piling on, because Pat Flynn, love Pat Flynn.
he's
He's
yeah, he's
one
great.
that I listen to regularly, and the Tim Ferriss show. Tim Ferriss is so unique too because of he brings on such a very
So
large
diverse.
mix of people. I think that's what's really unique about his podcast from other people's, and it's also insanely long. Most of his too.
Yeah, like
Uh,
2-3 hours.
yeah, it's crazy. But when you find a good one,
It's well worth it.
if I was gonna recommend one, Terry Crews,
Yeah, that one did
episode,
very well.
that was a phenomenal episode, with Tim Ferriss, and it's cool that you mentioned Rick Mulready because I've heard him mentioned at conferences and stuff, but I don't actually know a lot about him, so I'll definitely
He's
will
awesome, especially with the
check that
course that
out.
you've created. Like, he is great at building the proper Facebook ad techniques to deliver a great return on investment for the products like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely will check that out. So I do want to, I don't want to, keep too much of your time. And I love that we've dived deep, and I love these conversations too, because, again, we've been talking for a while now, but here, I'm even learning more things about you, seeing the commonalities that,
Yeah,
between you
there's
and I
there's
again,
tons.
which is so awesome to see as well. Um, but if there was, a culmination, like, so I love to, with this podcast, to me it's a lot about, the growth and habits of what you do. And so, um to go back to that and kind of transition into that a little bit, as like almost like a final note, is there anything else that maybe you can think of, as a habit? I know we've talked a lot about it, that's really just been a game changer, or here's another way to go about it, or another habit that maybe you don't do that's something that you would like to do.
Yeah, well, I can answer both those questions. A habit that I don't do that I really need to get better at is I'm pretty unorganized. I need to improve on that dramatically, and it's something that I've pointed that out as a flaw of mine, so something that I'm actively trying to work on. But what I try to do is utilize people who are very organized. So, like, I have some people in my life who are very organized, so I try to use them as a resource to say, okay, how do you conduct yourself like this? How can I be less of a mess and do things in more of a neat manner? So that's something I definitely want to work on. One thing else that I'd say is a common practice of mine is that I heard this real estate quote, and I kind of transitioned it into anything with life. And it says, the quote was, "You're not a tree, you can move." Meaning, so you control your own situation. So there's so many things that we can't control. Like, you need a job, you need to do all these things, you have responsibilities, but you control how those things get achieved. So it's like, I was always the guy who was searching out my next internship like a year ahead, because I wanted to make sure that I was giving myself the best opportunity to be in the best position possible for something that was beyond my control. I knew I had to work for those 4 months. I knew that's something that I had to do. So why not make it the best situation possible? And because I hate that when people complain. They're like, "Oh, like, the situation sucks." It's like, well, why does it suck? Because you put yourself in it. You weren't diligent enough to go ahead before and figure out, okay, this isn't where I want to be, and then make different situations. So that's something where I'm big on, is that you can always dictate where you are and where you're going.
That is so awesome, and I could not agree more. I think we often feel stuck. Something may happen, and you're never stuck.
Never.
That's a great quote. Where you can always pivot, you can always work on new things. You don't like your job, all right, stop complaining about it and go get another job.
That's it.
Or, and a lot of times too, it's like perspective. Also, like maybe you're just looking at it the wrong way,
And that
and
is something I've been guilty of for sure.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like I understand, but the perspective can be so much greater too. It's like, all right, well, maybe you don't love everything that you do, but how about you focus on the things that you do love and the value of that, you
That's
know?
powerful for sure.
Awesome. Ben, I want to thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you?
Yeah. So, well, I want to thank you again, once again, for listening and for talking to me. Sorry, and everybody listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Make sure to subscribe to Nick's podcast and rate it 5 stars in the podcast app. You have no idea how much that helps you, so make sure to do that for him. You can find me on my YouTube channel, just my name, Ben Leavitt. I'm also on Instagram at Ben Leavitt. So it's BenLeavitt. And there's an underscore in that. The guy who has just Ben Leavitt, he wouldn't sell it to me. So I got the underscore on Instagram. And then you can also find my podcast, which right now my podcast is called Do Dope Shit, and it will soon be changing names, which I alluded to earlier on. But yeah, so you can still find it as of when you listen to this. It'll be called Do Dope Shit. In the future, it'll be called Project Passion. So depending when you listen to this.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And remember, let's keep growing together. Wait. One more thing. I would first like to say thank you. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this message, please take a moment to write a review. By writing a review, it helps people find this message and helps me help more people. And if you really, really liked it, and you think this message could help someone else, take a screenshot, share it on Instagram, and please tag me at Nick J. Boni, NickJBoni, so I can show my appreciation for you. We can all win by helping each other grow. Thank you. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.